Hello and welcome to World Panorama. I'm Tracy, Shilshi. This is the show where we get to your weekly roundup of all the top international stories, starting with the headlines. Nawaz Sharif resigns as Prime Minister after Pakistani Supreme Court finds him guilty in the Panama Papers scandal. Former Petroleum Minister and senior PMLN leader Shahid Khaqan Abbasi to be appointed as interim Pakistani Prime Minister, media reports say. US President Trump is dealt a devastating setback on his efforts to repeal and replace Obamacare. US Senate fails to dismantle the healthcare scheme, a decision supported by 3 Republican senators as well. And Venezuela is gearing up for an election unlike any other. Protests increase against the scheduled polls on Sunday to elect members of a constituent assembly, a controversial new governing body that will have powers to rewrite the country's constitution. But first, we head to Pakistan, where Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif on Friday resigned after the country's Supreme Court disqualified him as an MP in the Panama Papers scandal. The ruling came after a probe into his family's wealth following the Panama Papers leak linking Sharif's children to offshore companies. For now, former Petroleum Minister and senior PMLN leader Shahid Khaqan Abbasi has been nominated as the interim Prime Minister.
Pakistan Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif resigned on Friday, hours after the country's Supreme Court held him guilty in the Panama Papers scandal. The top court of Pakistan disqualified him from holding public office and ordered corruption cases to be filed against him and his family. The court dismissed Sharif after an investigative panel alleged his family couldn't account for its vast wealth. Finance Minister Ishq Dar, one of the Sharif's closest allies, was also removed from office. This is the 3rd time Sharif has been unable to complete his term as the Prime Minister.
Pakistan ka koi bhi Wazir-e-Azam ho, Pakistan ki awam ke dil.
No matter who becomes the Prime Minister, the Prime Minister in the hearts of the Pakistani people will always be Mohammad Nawaz Sharif. Mohammad Nawaz Sharif, who is Prime Minister for the 3rd time, has no need for the chair of the Prime Minister.
Wazir-e-Azam ki kursi ki zarurat nahi hai.
Pakistan's opposition Tehreek-e-Insaf party welcomed the Supreme Court's verdict.
Pakistan's courts have made the Prime Minister accountable. Today is the day of victory for Pakistan.
The top court took up the case last October on petitions filed by the Imran Khan-led Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf and 2 others. The 2016 Panama Papers leak showed that Sharif and his family allegedly indulged in money laundering to buy expensive assets in London in the 90s through offshore companies. Sharif has consistently denied wrongdoing in the case. Meanwhile, Sharif's ruling PMLN party, which has a majority in parliament, is expected to name a new Prime Minister until the elections that are due next year. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
All right, for more on this story and the implications it would have in Pakistan and perhaps in India as well, we're joined by Mr. KP NAYAR, strategic analyst here. Mr. NAYAR, thank you as always for joining us here on World Panorama. First of all, what kind of implications could this have in Pakistani politics vis-a-vis Nawaz Sharif and his career? And also, would it have implications on Indo-Pakistan relations, bilateral relations?
Well, Pakistan never ceases to amaze. This is probably the Nawaz Sharif latest saga is probably the only instance in judicial history anywhere where the verdict, the consequences are followed by the trial. No? I mean, the Supreme Court has now ordered the trial of Nawaz Sharif and his family.
Yes.
But the consequences of what could have been the outcome of the trial has already taken place. So elsewhere in the world, the presumption is that until you are found guilty, you are presumed to be innocent. But in Pakistan, he has already been declared guilty, and he has been punished. He has lost the prime ministership, and now the trial will follow. But of course, if in the trial, Nawaz Sharif and his family are found guilty, then of course the dynasty, the prospects of the dynastic rule, where his daughter was supposed to succeed him eventually, may be dashed. But then again, his brother, eventually his brother is, this interim prime minister is an interim prime minister. The presumption is that Shahbaz Sharif will take over the prime ministership, because in Pakistan, unlike in India, you cannot be sworn in and then contest an election within 6 months, like in the Indian constitution. Shahbaz has to come into the National Assembly and then he has to be sworn in as
Absolutely, and that's a lengthy process that will take a few months.
Yes.
But as far as India relations are concerned, do we see any kind of a change at all? Because although the dialogue process, the bilateral relations have been slumped for the past 2 years, but is this in any way the chances also diminishing further?
I think it will be status quo. I don't see the possibility of any immediate repercussions. Largely because Pakistan is going into, in May next year, Pakistan is going into a general election. So that in the normal course is bound to happen. And when Pakistan goes into the general election mode, it's highly likely that they would change course on India. I mean, even the civilian part of it. In any case, the larger Indian approach by Pakistan is decided in Rawalpindi at the Army General Headquarters. And after the Pakistan general election takes place, if it takes place, unlike in other democracies in Pakistan, there is always an if connected with the general election. So even if the election takes place, by the time the new government, next government settles down, India will go into the election mode.
That's right.
So I do not envisage any major change until, say,
and all those reports of perhaps things worsening on the LOC, the army perhaps using this as a distraction and perhaps intensify, because winter will be approaching soon, and as a result of that, there is that worry of, as much as infiltration possible, these are the months that are going to be crucial. Do you see that in a sense increasing? Are those reports in any way valid?
It's difficult to predict. Because the chances of deterioration in India-Pakistan military relations is always there. I mean, supposing, God forbid, there is a terrorist act, which is not organized by ISI, but by rogue elements in Pakistan with links to the ISI. If something like that happens, relations could deteriorate. Pakistan may, it also depends on the situation in Doklam. Pakistan is watching. If the situation gets out of control by any chance, Pakistan may like to exploit that situation to its advantage. It's difficult to say, as far as the military front is concerned, what will happen. But when I say that nothing should be expected till mid 2019, what I mean is an uptick in relations, an improvement in relations, or any meaningful dialogue, any kind of...
anything concrete.
Yes, that is unlikely on the face of it until the Pakistan elections takes place, followed by the Indian general election.
All right. We'll have to leave it there at the moment, Mr. NAYAR. Thank you so much for joining us on this story. It's something that we'll be keeping an eye out on, of course, in the weeks to come, months to come also for that matter. Meanwhile, in a stinging blow to US President Donald Trump, the Senate there failed to dismantle Obamacare, a healthcare scheme introduced by his predecessor, the then President Barack Obama. Now, in a dramatic move, the decision was supported by 3 Republican senators as well. Here are more details.
In a blow to US President Donald Trump, the Senate on Friday rejected a Republican bill to repeal Obamacare. This after 3 Republican senators, John McCain, Susan Collins and Leila Murkowski, crossed party lines to join Democrats in a dramatic 49-51 vote to reject the skinny repeal bill.
Soon after the vote, Donald Trump tweeted that the 51 senators who voted against the failed so-called skinny Obamacare repeal bill have let the American people down. The Senate's decision undermines one of Trump's major campaign promises and also leaves the Republican president without a major legislative win after more than 6 months in power, despite Republicans controlling the White House, the Senate, and the House of Representatives.
Clearly a disappointing moment. From skyrocketing costs to plummeting choices and collapsing markets, our constituents have suffered through an awful lot under Obamacare. We thought they deserved better. It's why I and many of my colleagues did as we promised and voted to repeal this failed law.
Tonight was an unfortunate night. It was a sad night. But yet I don't believe this journey is over. For 7 years, Republicans have been promising the American people that we would repeal Obamacare. That has been the fundamental commitment of Republicans in the House, Republicans in the Senate, and the President. We have to honor that commitment.
As the news emerged, celebrations erupted outside Capitol Hill, where protesters had gathered against the withdrawal of the affordable health care popularly known as Obamacare. Former President Barack Obama's signature domestic achievement, Obamacare, provides health insurance to about 20 million Americans who were previously uninsured. But the health scheme has been relentlessly criticized by President Trump, who views it as government intrusion on people's healthcare decisions. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Russia's foreign ministry has demanded that US cut the number of diplomatic staff it has in Russia. It also said that it would seize 2 US diplomatic properties in a sharp response to a new sanctions bill passed by the US Congress a day earlier. The order, which affects the US Embassy in Moscow and consulates in St. Petersburg, Yekaterinburg and Vladivostok, would reduce the number of US diplomatic and technical staff to 455. Russia is also suspending the use of a US storage facility in Moscow and a country house outside of Moscow by the 1st of August. Moscow's latest move comes a day after the US Senate passed a sweeping legislation slapping new sanctions on Russia over its alleged interference in the 2016 US election, annexation of Crimea, and military operations in eastern Ukraine, and limiting President Donald Trump's ability to remove them. President Trump is yet to review the sanctions bill. With that, a quick break here, but still ahead on the show, the latest on the Israel-Palestine mosque conflict. Security measures are out, but tension remains.
The safety, honor and welfare of your country comes first. Your own ease and comfort will come last.
You are charged with NAYAR Section 41, waging war against the king.
Fire! रात दिन अपने सीने विच वजदी आजादी दे राग नू बंद कर ला। सब तो पहला मैं हिंदुस्तानी हाँ।
Welcome back. Muslim leaders lifted a boycott of Jerusalem's AlAqsa mosque on Thursday, and worshippers resumed praying inside the mosque. This came after Israel agreed to remove all security measures installed at the holy site after an attack in the old city earlier this month sparked violence. The tensions seemed to be eased a little bit. However, Israeli police with guns were still seen guarding the entrances of the mosque. Here are more details.
The last remnants of Israel's recently installed security apparatus being taken away early Thursday morning. All security infrastructure it had put in place at entrances to the mosque compound in Jerusalem's Old City were removed, taking a further step to try to diffuse heightened political and religious tension. Soon after, Muslim leaders announced their decision to ask Palestinians to re-enter the AlAqsa compound for the first time since the crisis erupted 2 weeks ago.
We looked at the report of the technical committee, who assured us that the obstacles Israel put outside the gates of the holy AlAqsa mosque and along the ways leading to were removed, and this is a victory to our nation after efforts were made to remove metal detectors.
Palestinians had fiercely objected to the security measures introduced, which included metal detectors at the entry gates after the killing of 2 Israeli policemen on July 14th. Worshippers had refrained from entering the Old City complex known to Muslims as Haram al-Sharif and to Jews as the Temple Mount in protest over what they saw as an Israeli attempt to exert control over the contested site. Mass prayer gatherings were held in the street outside the Old City walls, and clashes between Israeli security forces and demonstrators killed 4 Palestinians and 3 Israeli civilians. This attracted international concern, and soon Israel removed the metal gates. But Palestinians refused to end the boycott until all security measures were removed.
The destructive Israeli occupation tried to break the will of the nation, the Palestinian nation, and especially the Jerusalemites. They stood proudly, and we want them to keep standing to defend the holy mosque outside the gates and now inside the gates too.
Thanks to God, it is a victory with God's help. And we hope that a time will come in which we'll see all of Jerusalem and Palestine free.
Israel still maintains that the security measures were necessary because the weapons used to kill the police personnel on July 14th had been smuggled onto the compound. It has said it will introduce less obtrusive security measures over the next 6 months. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And now to Venezuela. With just a day to go, the South American country is bracing for a controversial constituent assembly election which has stirred up deep-rooted divisions. President Nicolas Maduro has insisted the vote will unite the nation, but the opposition decries it as a means to solidify socialist rule at the expense of democracy. Here's a report.
Venezuela is gearing up for an election unlike any it has faced before. Venezuelans will head to the polls on Sunday to elect members of a constituent assembly, a controversial new governing body that will have powers to rewrite the country's constitution. President Nicolas Maduro says that a new constitution is the only road to restore peace in the crisis-racked country, which is nearing economic collapse. But the country's opposition movement, which has staged street protests for months resulting in over 100 deaths and thousands of arrests, claims this is nothing more than a blatant power grab meant to give Maduro dictatorial powers.
This is an attempt at violating progress in human rights through the constituent process, where participation has been reduced to minimal expression amongst the people. This violates the progress of human rights, which have been enriched in the constitution.
The new body is virtually guaranteed to be heavily pro-Maduro, and this could give him more power than ever, which may be used to dissolve the opposition-controlled legislative branch. That is raising major alarm bells in Washington too. On Wednesday, the Trump administration slapped sanctions on 13 Venezuelan officials and warned of sanctions after the vote.
We will follow closely with our European partners the developments of the situation without ruling out the adoption of additional measures if they can be effective.
The wishes of the Venezuelan people to participate or not in this election need to be respected. No one should be obliged to vote, while those willing to take part should be able to do so freely.
Maduro has promised to hold a referendum on the new constitution, but many are skeptical that he will follow through on that promise. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And now let's take a look at some more updates in Globe Watch. Hundreds of demonstrators protested across New York City, Washington, San Francisco and Portland against President Donald Trump's ban on transgenders in the US military. Trump made the announcement through Twitter, saying that transgenders will not serve in the US military in any capacity, asserting that their service would bring tremendous medical costs and disruption. This reverses a year-old policy initially approved by the Defense Department under former President Barack Obama, which was still under final review. In June 2016, the Obama administration lifted a ban against transgender people serving openly in the armed forces. Ex-Georgian President Mikhail Saakashvili said that he would fight Kiev's decision to strip him of his Ukrainian citizenship. Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko stripped time ally Saakashvili of his Ukrainian citizenship for allegedly providing false information on his citizenship registration form in 2015. Saakashvili was president of Georgia for nearly a decade until 2013 and is wanted on charges of abuse of office. He lost his Georgian citizenship in 2015. Donald Trump's son-in-law and senior advisor Jared Kushner has denied colluding with Russia during the 2016 US presidential election, saying he had no improper contacts with the Russian officials. Giving evidence to a Senate panel investigation, Kushner said that all of his actions were proper and occurred in the normal course of events of the campaign. His appearance had been highly anticipated because until the Senate hearing, he had not personally responded to questions about his conversations with foreigners. At least 26 people were killed and 57 others injured in a suicide bike bomb attack in Pakistan's Lahore city. The suspected suicide bomber targeted police personnel deployed near residence-cum-office of Pakistan's Punjab province Chief Minister Shehbaz Sharif. Several police officers are among those dead. The Pakistani Taliban claimed responsibility for the explosion. And now let's change tracks. Get you all the latest from the world of sports in Sports Buzz. Katie Ledecky has made history by becoming the first woman to win 12 World Swimming Championship gold medals. The American won the 1500-meter freestyle by 19 seconds at the World Aquatics Championships in Budapest. Her time was the fourth fastest in history. The 20-year-old is now the most decorated woman in World Swimming Championships history as she passed compatriot Missy Franklin, who has 11 world titles. Bayern Munich manager Carlo Ancelotti has said that he does not expect to make any additional signings this pre-season and hopes to make a successful defense of his side's Bundesliga title with the current squad. The Italian has added a number of players in the last 2 months, including France's defender Corentin Tolisso and Colombia playmaker James Rodriguez. And he admitted that he was delighted with the balance in his squad ahead of the new campaign. Manchester City have signed left-back Benjamin Mendy from Monaco on a 5-year contract. The 23-year-old French international is manager Pep Guardiola's third major defensive signing in the current transfer window, following his purchases of Kyle Walker from Tottenham Hotspur and Danilo from Real Madrid. Mendy joined Monaco on a 5-year deal last season, winning the League One title in his sole season at the club, which also reached the Champions League semi-finals. 12-time Grand Slam champion Novak Djokovic will not play again in 2017 because of an elbow injury. The former world number 1 retired injured during his Wimbledon quarter-final match against Thomas Berdych on 12th of July. Djokovic said that he would spend the time building up his fitness and strength, as well as working on areas of his game he felt needed to be improved. And finally, Rolls-Royce Motors has unveiled the 8th version of the Phantom. The Phantom has had fans from rock stars to royalty and reinvented 8 times over the past 90 years. The luxury brand says the reinvention is its quietest yet, and yet will be one of the most sought-after luxury items in the world. We're leaving you now with the visuals of an exhibition at Bonhams in London to celebrate the new launch.